Okay, we will now move on to the city attorney, clerk, and elections, and Attorney Captain will lead the first portion of this.
And we're on page 21. There is, as you will notice from the 2019 adjusted budget to the 2020 department request, not a lot of change. The salaries, part of that went into wages, so that's the difference there. With respect to legal, which is about almost in the middle of the column, this is outside counsel. Obviously, we just never know from year to year if there's a conflict of interest or if there is are some circumstances under which we need to hire outside counsel. I'm pretty sure I put in 15,000. That's generally what I put in, and then the mayor reduces it every year. So that's where it's at, is 10,000. And
You were gone on vacation when I did that.
I was gone, yes. So unless there's any questions, there really isn't a lot of change from one year to the other. You know, the primary expense, of course, is salary wages. On page 24 is the city clerk's budget. Again, there's not a lot of change, although you'll see that the part of the salaries went into wages. But other than that, pretty much the same. There was a little bit of a reduction in tools and equipment because this year there was a purchase of an extra machine, as I recall, voting machine, or actually that's in the other, that's in elections, that's right.
Purchased a new chair.
Oh, a new chair, okay. But there's not a lot of change in city attorney or the city clerk's budget really from year to year.
Attorney Captain?
Yes.
Just for the audience and some of the new members, can you just please explain why the reason of taking salaries and putting it into wages?
And that probably would be John. I didn't know
Okay,
it
John.
happened till I saw it.
What we're trying to do is trying to break apart the salaried positions versus the hourly positions. And then, if you remember, last year, we kind of broke out the temporary help seasonal positions. This way, we can keep track of our staffing a little bit better. And we're working with our payroll clerk on making sure that going forward into 2020, we make all these, if we made these budget changes, that it actually follows through on the year-to-date numbers on payrolls. It's better to keep track of our staffing so that if at some point in time that there's a difference in the cost of living adjustment or something, we might be for different groups of employees or something. We've got everything separated out, so whatever happens can happen. So it's just, having it all combined as one number, that's a little harder for me, I feel, to manage on a year-to-year basis. Breaking apart makes, I think, a little bit more sense. This way, if you have asked questions, how many positions and salaries do we have in one group versus another, we can answer those questions pretty easily.
Thank you.
Moving on to page 26, that's elections. And you will notice that there is a substantial difference in the request for 2020 as compared to 2019 adjusted, and that comes in the form of wages, temporary help, because there will be a presidential election in 2020. So every 4 years, you do notice that there is a spike in the budget for elections, and that is what it's based on. There also is a little bit of adjustment for the pay of the poll workers. They are paid by the day. And I have to check, Debbie, how much did they go up? Just,
Per day, do you want, it went
Just-
up, based on each, there's 3 different categories,
and
so,
I'm just referring to, I don't recall exactly, it now, or what's proposed is 140 a day for the regular?
yes, that's what's proposed,
And-
and currently it's 120
Okay, so that's $20 additional
for that category.
for that
Yeah, I
category.
got 3 different categories,
There are regular poll workers, alternate,
which are the alternate chief inspectors, and then we have our chief
and then the
inspectors.
right.
So all
and
of them
the-
got a slight increase.
The chief inspector, as an example, receives $175 for the day.
Up from 150.
Up from 150 if,
And I-
making sure everyone heard that. Pardon me?
It's roughly a 14-hour, if they work all day, it's a 14-hour day,
Wow, okay.
yeah. But then they also, people have the opportunity to work a half a day, so, but it's roughly about 14 hours if they work all day.
And so for 2019, well, it was scheduled for 2 elections. There actually only was 1. And then for 2020, what's scheduled are 4 elections. And of course, you never know if there may be an additional one. Sometimes an additional one's thrown in there.
Jack has a question. Alderman Grady?
Thank you. Yeah, my question, I know, every year, I know Debbie, you always wanted to get a new booth or something. In the capital project, we always knock it down. Would that help offset some of this excess salaries and,
The
or
extra
anything or
booth?
not, or
No,
it's still
not
not,
necessarily.
nothing
The
to do?
booths are
Okay.
used for when the actual people come in, so, yeah. Yeah.
And actually, that actually is a purchase for this year,
Yes.
is 1 additional booth. So,
Well, one
or
additional
one additional
machine,
machine, excuse
yeah,
me.
just to have,
There's 1 machine at each polling place. And then this year, there was in the budget purchase of 1 additional machine. That's an extra one, because the county just has 1 machine that is for the
whole county.
The whole county.
yeah.
And I know the way we've projected them in the CIP is we just have as a placeholder out 10 years, I think it is, starting to replace them again. But the last ones went for much longer than that.
They were almost 20 years.
So within the CIP workshop, we did have electronic poll books in there. I heard from several of you that you preferred paper and had some concerns about that, so we did push those out an additional year, knowing that we had some concerns with our borrowing for this year as well. So those are not in the budget at this point.
And then on page 235, those are the insurances. Oh, let's see, not 235. Actually, that one, it's the next page, 236. And the request then is, there are increases for the most part in all of the categories of insurance. The only one that we know for certain thus far is the liability insurance, because that one we know the price a few years in advance. You may recollect that we just did go through the process of recommitting to liability insurance through CIVMIC, and that was for the year 2021, so we already know then what the premium is going to be for 2021 as well. But the rest may be adjusted somewhat depending when the renewals actually come in. But it's usually not very much. As you can probably take note from if you look at the adjusted budget and then what we have there in the year-to-date.
Alderman Langton, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just was wondering about the vehicle.
Yes,
Is that a vehicle that you use to go places?
that's
Wait a minute.
liability insurance for all of the city vehicles that are operated
Okay.
on the roads.
Okay, thank you.
That's the end of your list.
And that is the end of my list. There may be a little bit of a reduction in the property insurance. We're expecting an increase. I had informed you, and we had received word from IMPIC, Municipal Property Insurance Company. But there were, we were able to take off liability insurance for a vacant building, which was 140 Main Street. So that makes a little bit of difference. There were a couple of changes, but we're still working through that. I did get the premium, but we do have some things to work out yet on the list of assets. So, but I do expect it to be just a little bit lower than the 42,400, but not significantly.
If we could go back to page 27, Attorney Captain, just to talk just a little bit about the court, the municipal court budget. No.
I don't run the court, so that's why
Yeah.
it's not really,
It was on your docket here, though.
yeah.
The fee that we have here, that $3,600, that is the annual charge for us to rent or lease the space from the city of Neenah for the joint court. That's all that is there. However, as I've mentioned to Mayor Merkus, the municipal court, the amount of fines and revenues that it collects has not been historically been sufficient enough to cover the cost of the operations of the court. And I think right now it's running roughly like about $10,000 in the red every year, and that has been happening for a number of years. So there is a amount out there that is recognized in both Neenah's and Menasha's financial statements of their share, or our share and their share of the deficit that at some point would need to get repaid, or could get repaid back or whatever. We decided not to start paying that down in the 2020 budget request. However, that will be something that I will continue to discuss with Mayor Merkus on that, just to see when would be the time, or maybe have some discussion with the council to see at one point, what is your appetite to look at that? Because I think our share is roughly like about, ballpark about 100,000 in the whole that's accumulated over a number of years.
This was supposed to save us money.
I think the bigger discussion is how we want to operate that court, if we want to return that back to circuit court, if we want to start subsidizing that court, if there's other ways of bringing in additional revenue so it does break even. What are the costs if we return back to circuit court, and what is the, how will these be prosecuted if we bring it to circuit court versus our municipal court? And Alderman Severnick is correct, this was supposed to actually make money, and the study shows that it would bring a new revenue stream into the city. It has never even broke even, I don't think, in the entire time. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. So, wouldn't it be as simple as just raising the fines? Or not? I mean, shouldn't the fines be able to cover the cost? So shouldn't we have charge more fines to cover?
Do you wanna talk about how the ticket revenues are split, Attorney Captain?
Sure.
In general, I know you don't probably have the exact numbers, but.
I do for some. Just as an example, if the total amount on a citation is $98.80, the actual forfeiture amount to the city is $30, and $68.80 is divided up between the state. There's a jail fee, some other county fee, and a little bit goes to municipal court.
Were we losing, I'm sorry? Before we went to this, our own court, were we losing money then at that court? That was the reason why we,
That was run by the county at that point. I
Okay.
can share the study with you
oh,
if you want at some point, but one of the main reasons that we looked at having our own municipal court, from my understanding, was so that we did not have to be at the whim of the county.
oh,
So at that point, it was at circuit court. Circuit court was held in Neenah, just as it is our municipal court. But I don't know if they were considering moving it down to Winnebago County. It does cost us significant money to have our police officers there when we have
right.
municipal court. We don't make money on fines and forfeitures. It costs us more in staff time for every ticket that we issue that goes to court than we get back in revenues.
So if I could add, Mayor.
Sure.
So part of the reason for this too was that the mayor's correct at one point. Some of it was handled still in Neenah. There was a circuit court. But also too, it had more to do with, it wasn't always being handled there. There are other circuits and other, I guess what I want to say is that we were sending our police officers on almost a whole day to be down in Oshkosh kind of deal. So it would have been better to just have them closer. So instead of a full day, maybe a partial day, those kind of things. There's a whole bunch of other things that are involved, but there was just a feeling at that time, former city attorney Jeff Brandt put this together, that we could save on costs, and the mayor hit it on the head too. We don't know. Maybe we still are. Yeah, there's these expenses, but we don't know what those expenses would be if the circuit court was back here. So and it's new to Menasha. Most communities have their own, even at the time, a township near us had their own court. I think they still do, the village now. So it's not uncommon, but it seems as though, I guess we'd have to look at why it's going up like it is. Is it related to salary? You know, or is it related to fewer forfeitures? Or what? So I mean, yeah, I think it's something we should look at, but whether it's gonna be a savings or not, I don't know. I'm not sure if it would be. It's gonna be an expense, crime cost.
Go ahead.
One of the other citations, which is a pretty hefty one, is for OWI, operating while intoxicated. The total cost is around $575. The forfeiture, which is the part that comes to the city of Menasha, is $150. So all of those other costs are going out to the state, the crime lab, the jail fee, the county, a little bit to the municipal court, and then that 150. If we have officers, a lot of times the OWIs are during the late night shift, and if those officers are called in, that's 3 hours minimum of overtime. You know, which those costs aren't even included in anything that you see here. So I would venture to guess as well, if you look at numbers from other communities, there's costs that you don't even think that are associated with municipal court, like I just referenced, when you have officers that we have to call in to testify, so, which probably isn't even gonna cover the 150. So, and if there's 2 officers on that case or something, then, you know. And then there may be officers that all of a sudden they, if they can't come in that next day or something, if all of a sudden we're paying overtime. So, but it's hard to figure out what to do with that.
Okay. Any other questions?
I would
for the
just say
attorney?
that this cost, this $3,600 is cheap. Very cheap, $300 for their offices that we pay. Yeah, in fact, we shouldn't even talk about it.
Well, as Director Jacobs was talking about, it's more like we need to be budgeting probably 20,000-ish per year just to break even. And we probably need to budget another 10 or 15 to get caught up as well.
Yes, yes, because when I talked with Director Easker from NINA about this about 6 months ago, he thought that the trend for that it was getting closer to break-even point, but then when they sent the financial numbers to myself and to Jennifer, we saw it and we're like, yeah, you're not quite getting close to breaking even. It's still losing about $10,000 a year, and of course our share is roughly like about 40% of that, so it continues to lose, that deficit keeps growing, and all we're paying for is this leasing space fee, we're paying nothing else, and the revenues stream is not covering enough of it. Part of the problem also is that I do have a little knowledge working with another municipality with a municipal court running with multiple jurisdictions under one court, and the thing is the collection, the timing of the collection for the revenues can be it can be a very long time, many, many years. So you don't, even though the citation is issued, the collectability of that and even getting it through a collection on the refund. Yes, so, yes, and even when a person files their state income taxes. Yes, and so it can take multiple years and even collect it off of your tax refund on your state income tax return. It could take multiple years to pay that off or have that swiped. So it's a long term of trying to collect it, so.
Okay, we're gonna move on to administrative services. Well, we probably need a whole workshop at some point. And we've been talking about that for a couple of years now, we just haven't gotten there yet. John, you're only allowed one slide.
Pardon?
One slide.
No, although I will not take an hour. I mean, if this covers more than 10 minutes, I promise my staff to keep it, yes, to keep it short, so. As you might remember, that there are the 4 different branches in the administrative services for the assessor's office, the finance area, the human resources, and the information systems. The first 3 are funded in the general fund. The last one has an internal service fund, which means that all the departments, all the funds are contributing towards it. So it's not 100% covered through the tax levy. It's, some of it comes from like the sewer, the stormwater utility, and the public works garage. And I also have, like Sam had, the page numbers are referenced at the very top, so I won't make mention of the page numbers. For the finance department, there are no staffing changes, no major cost increases. There is a slight reduction in the accounting financial services line item of about $3,500. We were required every 3 years to have a post-employment benefit actuary study done, which was done in 2019 for our 2018 audit. There will be a minimal update with that actuary study, but the cost savings is there that we will not have to go through the full-blown study all over again. Hi, Kurt. He knew.
Got connections.
In the human resources area, there again, there's no staffing changes, no major cost increases. There is just a slight reduction overall in fringe benefits due to someone not needing the full family benefit anymore. They could go just to family spouse for some of the insurances. So therefore, there was a slight reduction there. Otherwise, no major changes from the previous year, from 2019 to 2020. Next area is the city assessor, is that we have our contracted assessor for Associated Appraisal Consultants, which completed the reassessment process during 2019's year. And you remember they went ahead and did that at a no cost increase to have that done citywide. Then therefore they went and deferred not doing 1/4 of a revaluation of 1/4 of the community, so they did that in lieu of that. So going forward in 2020, they will continue to go back to doing the 1/4 of the community like they had been doing. The manufacturing properties are not done by the local assessor. Those are done by the state of Wisconsin, so therefore they do the evaluation, they do the evaluation determination, the forms get filed to the state, and then they charge us a fee for their services for that. And then the remainder of the budget, other than the contract services in the state, are actually for IT costs, postage and printing for about $14,000. I put this slide up here. It was similar to last year. Reason being is that we do have one little thing after the reassessment got done that we should probably talk about with you. If you see the lines where the 2018 valuations are, which is about kind of in the middle, I highlighted in red and pointed arrows to them. You could see where when the assessment ratio, which is that second column to the right, falls below 90%, the state will require you within a couple years to have a revaluation done, especially of that class of property. You can see the residential was at the 88% level, and that we decided to do the reassessment in 2019, so that if you go up to the 2019 line for residential and fall all the way over to the right, our assessment ratio is at about 101%. So it's just 1% difference from where the equalized state's full market value is. However, look at the commercial. When the commercial, for 2018, the ratio where the difference between the full value the state says and what the assessed value, you can see the difference on the commercial line was, for 2018 was 228 million versus 247. So there was a difference of about, it was 92% of full value. We thought that when the reassessment would have gotten done in 2019, we thought we would have gotten closer to 100% of commercial, because all residential, all commercial were all done. However, when the state came out with their full valuation in 2019, we were a little bit disappointed that their number had gone up even more so than we were expecting. So we are still at 96% of full value, so we're roughly about 4% short on our assessment values for commercial property going forward into 2020. So part of our goal for next year, and I talked with the assessors on this, is to re-examine the commercial assessment valuations in the city comparing to what the state's full market values are. So, because we're undervalued about 4% right now, and so that the plan is not only would they begin on the residential, going back and doing 1/4 of the city every year, but they would focus on the commercial parcels of the city to get those a little bit closer up to full market value. Because that would be beneficial also to have those up to full market where they would be, and it would also help us with our budget going forward also. So just to let you know, that is our plan for 2020, the goal. Moving forward on some of the other pages that are responsible in the finance area, you have the tax refunds and uncollectible debt. There is no change for the number on page 36 for the tax refunds, still $6,000. And for the uncollectible debt that we end up having to write off, we are proposing a decrease of about $800, so the dollar amount in the budget would be $8,700. Then jumping forward into the special revenue funds on pages 194, 195, the post-employment sick leave reserve program. As you remember, 2020 will be the second year in a row that we have not had the tax levy funding this amount. It was roughly like about $60,000 every year. What we're doing is we're allocating the charge from all the different departments. And when we proposed the budget last year, we proposed roughly about 1% of all wages that are eligible for sick time to be funded towards that. Then, on the night of the budget adoption, that amount was lowered to about 0.88%. So it was lowered a little more than 0.1%. For this budget year, we looked at the amount of the number of people that would be eligible or that might be retiring in the next year, and looking at the 2021 year also. So we felt that we could reduce that percentage funding from all the departments down to about 0.75% to 0.75, which is roughly funding about $66,000 from the different departments and the different funds to put that money into the bank, and then to pay out the estimated payouts of, we're estimating about 2 possible retirements of $70,000 to be paid out of that fund. Back under the revenues area, the $37,344 number, that is the projected unused sick leave balance for retirees that will have aged out in 2020. We have 3 employees that have accumulated a balance, but they will have become Medicare age eligible, and so therefore the way our existing employee handbook has it written is that once they become a Medicare age eligible, that benefit would not be eligible to them upon their retirement. So actually what will happen then is if the 3 employees do not retire in 2020 or any future year, that amount would come back to the city, that we would not have to pay that future obligation out. And for 2019, we had one person that was in the program that ended up becoming Medicare age eligible, so therefore $2,200 of what they would have had available would not have to be paid out, so that will go back to the city, back into the fund balance. So right now what we're estimating at the end of this year, 2019, is about a fund balance of about $118,324. Any questions on that at all?
Do you invest or do you get interest when you bank those?
Jen, question?
Is there a reason? It's a lot of money not to gain any kind of interest.
I mean, citywide, we earning interest on unused funds. However, this is not one of the funds that we have allocated interest. The amount interest is actually going to the general fund instead of being allocated to this fund. If this is something that the Common Council would like us to look into to doing, going
So
forward in
this is
2020.
part of the general fund?
No, it's a
Oh.
separate standalone fund, it's a
Okay.
special revenue fund. It's just the interest earnings on all other funds other than like the garage fund, the stormwater, the sewer fund, and the TIF funds. Those are accumulating interest earnings on a positive cash balance on a monthly basis. This fund here, we just have not allocated the interest to it, so any interest would actually be just going to the general fund instead of here.
Oh, why would that be? Why wouldn't it be part of the fund?
This fund has typically been pretty much zero in the past as well. We fund it on an annual basis. So there typically isn't money in it.
The thing is, we know we've got these retirements.
The reason I bring this
Yep.
up, I think all our funds should be allocated, not just sitting somewhere and not earning some type of, I mean, Tom Stoffel used to go out and do investments even, but they were secured, you know, simple types.
With collateral, yep,
Yeah.
yep.
All right, whatever.
Well, we still do that with our funds, we still use CDs, we still have CDs. Well, this would be invested with that pool as well. What John is saying is that pool of funds isn't, we don't take the $30 in interest that we get out of this for the year and allocate it back to that fund.
A lot more than that.
Well, whatever it is, yeah.
It's,
There are fund,
Regardless, yeah.
can always talk to John.
so, I mean, what we're doing is that we are spending it down, so you can see the balance of, I mean, we're expecting 70,000. It's gonna be about that amount or even larger possibly for 2021 or 2022, depending on who would retire. So the thing is, we're gonna be watching how much we allocate from the departments to fund it, knowing and looking and seeing who is age eligible or might consider retiring that might end up withdrawing the balance. So like the mayor had said, 118, this is probably the highest it's been in the last number of years. But this balance will go down quite quickly in the next 3 years. Okay, the next fund is the HRA Health Insurance Program. This is a fund that has a very small, we were in the negative at the end of 2017. However, with our claims history coming through for the employer side of how much we're funding it, we believe that we'll be back to almost break even at the end of 2019. And going forward in 2020, as long as we have a normal year, we're funding it that the amount coming from all the departments, which is included in the health insurance cost allocated to each department, is going to be about the same amount as hopefully the estimated claims being paid out of the fund, the 108,000. So this is basically a wash. And then the next one is the self-funded dental insurance program. This one we are making a recommended policy change for 2020. In past years, typically the amount that we funded for the revenue would be equal to the estimated claims and administration fees to be paid out. However, and you can kind of see the fund balance that we're expecting to be in the fund about $94,000 at the end of this calendar year. However, going forward for 2020, to try to help reduce the amount that we would be requesting funding from all the departments, we're basically cutting about $50,000 from the amount that we could have charged to all the departments in the funds for next year. So that the funding level we are requesting is $77,646. However, our estimated claims to be paid out is about $122,000. So therefore, that will bring that fund balance down to about $50,000. This was a way to try to help us balance the budget, trying to keep the tax rate lower and try to not pass on an additional $50,000 in costs to the departments when we knew we had a fund balance that was almost $100,000. So we can't continue this process for every year. This is a one-time policy recommendation that we were proposing for 2020. For 2021, we likely would end up having to fund it much closer to what the estimated claims would be. Are any questions on that? Okay, and then the last fund or of discussion is the Information Technology Fund. There again, this is another fund that's been set up for a number of years where the funding sources is all coming from, there's a methodology of, in a large spreadsheet that does the computation of how all the departments, all the funds are contributing towards this for the costs of the staffing and equipment replacement and licenses and things that all the departments contribute towards. So we're looking at revenue streams of about 387,000. And if you remember when I proposed 2 years or a year and a half ago about adding the second full-time position into the department, I promised you that we would be using some of the fund balance so that all the departments wouldn't have to contribute at the existing expenditure level. So you can see there's a difference of about $15,000 between the revenues and expenditures. And there we're using on some of that fund balance to offset that so that the amount we didn't have to charge to all the departments would be about $15,000 less. So the way we've got it right now is I was comfortable with proposing a budget of, for the $402,000, which is about a 1.27% increase, which is very close to where the general fund was at the 1.59% increase. And that fund balance out there, that was an amount that was partly from unused dollars from staffing and from contracted services not used in full every year for the last few years. But we're using that to offset the cost of the second full-time position for several years, and then also for monies for the GIS program to get the equipment, so we would not have to borrow for that going forward. So you'll see that on the next slide.
Randy's got a question.
Oh, John,
Yes.
So do I.
leave it on. All right, John, on 2015, what was, if you look back to 215 compared to 220, why was it so high in 215? What have we been doing? Or saving money somehow? Or, I mean, it's gone down from 463,000
That's part of my question, because I know what the answer is. but
and down to
go ahead.
448,000.
And you're the top line is the line that actually hits the budget. There are additional costs that the departments specifically have for computers and things that are in that second line, but the top line, you're correct. I was not here in 2015, so I do not know, and I don't want to put Jennifer on the spot if she recalls why there was that big reduction from 15 to 16. If could it have been that you did have, that was the year when you had the 2 full-time positions?
That's what it is.
And then you went down to 1 full-time position
and
for
that's-
several years, and then now we went back up again.
And then to follow up with that, if I may, Randy?
Okay.
Okay.
Yep, go
Is,
ahead.
we have an individual that left, so there should be additional funds for 2019 that could be carried over to this budget. So unless it's being allocated for something else. So can you address that?
Correct. And if you remember, we also do have it's a 3-part team. You have the 2 full-time positions, and then you'll have the contracted consultant for like roughly about $30,000 to
There
$40,000.
still should be a saving.
Correct, and there is continual savings in that fund, so that we have a fund balance that we can use for the next number of years to offset. I'm not gonna take it all in one full swipe.
Right.
I would rather take off a layer of the cake every year to help offset the funding, so that the minimal increase to the departments is just a little over 1%. I did make a small little change also in the printing cost budget. It did lower it. I believe, I think it was maybe about $3,000 or $4,000. That's included in here also. That I just felt we're asking too much of the departments for printing costs based on what our actual billings that we were getting from our leasing of our equipment.
Okay.
Thank you. What page can I find that sheet on?
That is,
243. Thank you. And that second full-time position, has that been advertised or filled yet?
we have gone through the second interview process last week, and we have made a conditional, or we're still working on background checks. So we have made a decision of the 3 finalists that we did have of the 5 that we had interviewed.
Okay, thank you.
So we anticipate on hiring the person and having them start on the first Monday in December. So I think that's December 2nd, yeah. And then, just to bring you up to speed on the 2020 project goals for the IT department, there are several of them. We've got the GIS system to work with the Community Development Department and a third-party provider to get this implemented. I know it's a desire that Sam and the mayor would like to get going, and it's not just for their purposes. All the departments of the city actually could be use the GIS system for it. So it's not just a mapping tool, but it's also for parcel management and activities happening, not just in the infrastructure of the city, but also on all the parcels within the city. One thing that Jennifer and I and Kurt will be working on next year will also be the tax collection system. The city of Neenah, with them going off of their AS400 system, by summertime of next year, we would need to find another alternate way to do tax collection. And we have had a meeting with a vendor that provides tax collection and maintenance for Winnebago and Calumet counties. By George, they do use the same software. So this is a easy solution to get a license to use their system. Since it's the same system, this would be, but we'd have to keep the two, have a link to each of them separate. But we would be able to do this pretty easily through them. We would just end up importing our data from our assessment software, and Jennifer and I would work on putting the tax rate information in, and then the special assessments would also have to be part of that. So this is something that we'll be working on in the earlier part, because we do have to have this up and running probably by the end of summer next year, if not sooner. But we can use the existing services with City of Neenah for December 2019's collection, but that will end on August of next year, and then we have to have a Plan B ready to go for next year. In the original budget that we had submitted to the mayor, we had a request from the different departments of 19 PCs on the replacement schedule. However, we did decrease that request down to 12 to replace an upgrade, and I'll have another slide to talk a little bit more about that specifically. And then we have now transitioned to Heartland Business Systems for contracted services and this fall and going forward, and we are working with them to have an update, a long-range strategic IT equipment replacement plan.
Before you move forward, there's a couple questions. I don't know who was first, but.
Go ahead, Steve.
John, really quick on the GIS system, is there a reason why the one that is provided by Winnebago County that can be accessed is not sufficient at all? I mean, is the one that you're planning to get through a third party have aspects to it that the Winnebago County system does not have?
If Sam were here, he could probably jump on that a lot more.
Okay.
There's other things that we probably want to keep track of, like say parcel maintenance and up, like in the code enforcement area. If there are some parcels that are that are nuisance properties, they could be flagged and kept track of. I do not know if Winnebago County system would be able to keep track of information about parcel by parcel by parcel.
Right, thank you.
We cannot add additional information
cannot, okay,
to theirs. We can use theirs, but not add. They also want to add our cemetery database to that. They want to add our forestry database to that, and I think a few other databases that we wouldn't be able to with the county system.
Okay, thank you.
Plus, it's in 2 different counties, which creates problems too. Randy?
So, yeah, thank you, Mayor. So, John, when I look down, specialized equipment, what's, that has gone up from 100,000 to 153 over a 2-year period. What specialized equipment did we do on page 245?
Okay, that would be line item 2404.
Yep.
And if you look at the Listing, the detailed listing by department is listed on page, is 247 and 248. They're all listed there, by department. So you've got like the police department. Here, let me share this with you, so.
Right.
These are all the different software licenses that we've got for maintenance, by departments, and, I'm trying to remember if there are, I mean, some of them are a 3 to 5% increase. We're kind of stuck with those percent, it's not a 1 or 2% increase. Some of them are a little bit more. So I think part of it could be for just the, inflationary costs on some of them. I'm trying to think if there was any new ones that we've since added, since last year.
I mean, the salaries were easy to figure out. That was in the first line from 80 to 106,000.
And
That was
here.
easy, but I can't find the specialized equipment. I'm missing these things and I'm wondering.
Right, and the thing is that you look at the list by departments, I'm thinking it's probably in the global area, on page 248. You've got them all listed there. We've got, our things for our backup software and
Yeah,
core
that's it.
switch maintenance. There are things that, in the email archiver, there are things that, Heartland said, these are the things you should be replacing. I know we have a server that we're gonna be replacing here at City Hall, or is it at the P? The backup server is running on a 2003 system, so we need to get that one upgraded. So that's something, and then with some of the VMware licensing for our virtual PCs that we've got running, to have those available. These things are a little bit more than just a small inflationary cost on something, so we're not asking for anything over and above.
Okay. Thank you, John. I was just looking for clarification and you
Okay.
showed it to me later on.
Sure.
Thank you.
Then I wanted to address Alderman Nichols' question that she had a couple weeks ago for us on our Windows 10 upgrade plan. We talked a little bit with Heartland about this, and we did a quantity look of where we're at with our existing PC fleet, if you can call it that. There are 89 PCs citywide and laptops that we have in the city that our department is responsible for and upgrading from Windows 7 to Windows 10 operating system. This does not include the library. The library is done through WinFox, through Winnebago County, and the fire department, which would be done through the IT department at the city of Neenah. At the end of 2019, out of those 89, we'll have 68 that will be on still running on Windows 7. So in the last 2 years, during 2018, 2019, we've upgraded or replaced out 21 of our PCs in the fleet. During the 2020 budget year, we'll have 12 that we'll be upgrading or replacing out, which will leave us by the end of next year at 56. So one of the goals that we had talking with Heartland is that the most sensitive PCs should be upgraded, and those should be in the police department area. And there are 6 of the 12 next year that are in the police department that are scheduled for replacement, and the others are in the finance HR areas. So those are the ones that are scheduled to get replaced and upgraded. The last thing is, one of the other goals was that the last oldest network server that we have is scheduled to be replaced in 2020. It's still running on an old 2003 system, so that one was most critical to get that one, for security purposes, upgraded and running on a more current version. So then we look at the other 56 that we still have out there, and if we actually went full out to replace the licenses for those remaining and upgrading just the license and not the PC itself, that cost would be about $7,300. We did not put that in the budget. We felt that if the security risk ones are the ones to be addressed first, that we have proposed in our 2020 budget. With the remaining 56, we thought that right now we would propose doing maybe 12 to 15 a year, so that we would knock the rest of them out over the next 3 to 4 years. Are there any questions on that? But that's just kind of our plan.
Can you go over page 250 a little bit? Is this where it? What you wanna explain that?
Sure. The overall IT budget for, that gets allocated to the departments is the bottom number on that page. The total IT budget of 2020 is 402,637.
And this is how it's broken down.
And this is how it gets broken out by percentages. This is something that has been, I don't know how many years, maybe Jennifer has an idea of how many years this formula has been out there. We haven't re-looked at it, but there is an allocation percentage by department. And even in the Park and Rec area, the Park and Rec, there is an allocation for the pool. There's a allocation for the marina. Public Works, it's for engineering and for out at the Public Works garage. So there are multiple pieces within each department that have an allocated piece. So the departments are contributing for general global services of 246,640. Then you add the specific items or licenses specific just for their department of $122,000 or $123,000. And then we're applying part of the fund balance of 15,000. So the funding request, I think, is 387,000. And then there's a printing budget to the right of that it's a whole separate calculation. So that I did reduce the amount of the printing costs downward globally across the departments. I thought it was 3,000 or 4,000. It's actually a $2,000 reduction. But then in a nutshell, it's
2,500.
You're correct. I need stronger glasses. Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So but this is something that the city has been using consistently over the last couple of years, and I'm fine with continuing to use this. We could fine tune the percentages a little bit going forward, but this probably is not the on my top 5 list to relook at that. But it's a good thing that it's being spread across the departments and across all funds. So it's not just the general fund picking up the cost of all this. It is spread across other funds that have other revenue sources other than property taxes to fund it. And then the only other thing I'd last on my list for tonight was on page 272. That's the CIP budget. And this amount was there for the 19 budget, and since with losing one person in our full-time department for the IT and having discussions between Josh and Sam and other staff of what would be the better system to go with, we decided that we will wait until we're back up to full strength. We'll have another meeting or two with the mayor on deciding which direction to go and what kind of contracted provider to assist us to get this over the hurdle. And we are just putting just a basic $25,000 amount in there. It's in the IT fund balance right now. It's been carried forward for a number of years. So the funds would be moved to the CIP budget to pay for this when it happens. So this would not be included in the borrowing program for next year. It's in the CIP to be spent there, but not to be included in the borrowing program. So I just thought that all the capital assets should probably be all in one fund instead of scattered across different funds. Just like the Public Works facility. Are there any other questions? Kurt is here to answer any IT question you could possibly ask. So
Let's just tone it down a notch.
Alderman Nichols.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not sure who to address this to, whether it's Director Jacobs, Kurt, or the mayor. And if you can't answer my question tonight, that's fine, but I will follow up. And I'd like to learn more about what you're thinking about being included as part of that GIS package and how it would be implemented. Whether it would be a cloud-based program or an actual software program on our.
I believe that we already own parts of the software that we need, but this would be something that would be available to the public through the cloud, portions of it, and then also available in an expanded way for both our engineering staff and staff within City Hall for some items that might not necessarily want to be out at the public level. We would look at hopefully implementing this with a consultant to get it up and running, and also just kind of phase it in over time. It probably wouldn't be the entire system in the first year, so we would get the base maps, some of the script routines that pull data from existing databases put together to start out with, and then we would add to that in subsequent years. But you would see something similar to the Winnebago County GIS if you pull up on their map, but it would have added data that we already collect that we would have. I don't know exactly what the correct terminology is for this, you might have it better, Kurt, but it would pull that data from those existing databases on a regular basis automatically to make sure that that database is up to date.
The problem right now is that, like, the health department keeps track of things for the lead program. The code enforcement, they keep track of some things. The police department keep track of certain different residences that they, are monitoring regular. There's a lot of data that all the departments have. Nobody's sharing any information with anybody, and there are some of us that maybe want to know or should be in the loop on something. And so if we have it all in one spot, that would make more sense for the efficiency of the department, so that 2 or 3 departments can be monitoring something that they all want to be included in on, versus everybody has their own standalone spreadsheets or programs or whatever that they're doing.
And what about information that is collected in the field in real time and uploaded to the database in real time? And that means
Staffing?
staff or, public works crews having an iPad in the field that they can take pictures with, doing the sewer picture, camera things, all of that can be literally uploaded in real time and used. Any conversations about that?
Do you want to address the staffing? We're trying to figure out how, once we get it up and going, how to and which department and who's going to be, or is every department going to be on their own?
I don't think that's what she's asking. She's asking, and I'm not sure what data you're thinking about, but you're saying, I go out in the field, I'm a code enforcement officer, I see that this house has half the siding falling off of it, I take a picture and I download it right into that software.
Or you can fill out the form right on the software instead of a piece of paper that you take back to the office and record.
And I'm not sure if that is phase 1 or not. I have not talked with Sam if that was one of the items. That is something I think that we'd want to go in the future. Code enforcement can be done both on a public and an employee basis. And Sam has worked with programs like that in the past, and that is one of the things he did want to work on in the future, but I'm not sure which phase of the items that was in.
The reason I'm asking is because while I was at the League of Municipalities conference, I attended a session on GIS and learned more about the capabilities and the way that municipalities are using it throughout their entire organization, from public works to community development to police, to tracking lead abatement, to police calls, utility work, anything and everything you can imagine. It's real-time information. And so I'm asking these questions in hopes that we can be encouraged to really understand what it is we want and how we want to use it, and to be knowledgeable about the opportunities that are available so that we can move forward ready to go, instead of saying, oh, I wish I would have, or I wish we could have.
Yeah, we had that discussion, was that maybe 6 or 8 months ago? We had kind of competing visions between the engineering department and the community development department based upon exactly what you were saying, and we did sit down with a vendor to make sure that it wasn't, oh, we bought this program and now it won't do these things. And we're confident that the base program that we're getting will do those types of things. But first, we have to get the base map and then add those things in. So yes, those are the types of things that we do want to add in as time goes on, but you can't do it in 1 year.
You can't do one in 1 year.
You can't put all that stuff together in 1 year. You need to start out with the base map. Well, basically, what we want this to be is, I want to be able to click on 123 Elm Street, and it will tell me everything about your property, whether you have code enforcement issues there, whether you have police calls there, whether your kids are taking rec classes, whether you have lead paint, whether you.
Or if you have,
In your
or if you have
basement.
Well,
delinquent
and-
taxes.
And I think, you know,
Exactly.
when you say it like that, you're kind of scaring people to think that we're keeping track of them, when really it's a way for us to map our community right down to the pipes that are under the ground, the wires that are up above, the roads, the trails, how things work underground.
So, yeah,
So-
so another, yeah, go ahead.
So I feel like, you know, we're having this competing conversation right now about the actual capabilities of GIS and how far it's come since the first time we started talking about this, you know, back in 2011 or 2013.
about that long before
Then we need to be aware of the capabilities of GIS and how far it's come.
This, you'll be allowed, you could click on the pipe in front of that house and it will tell you it was put in 1923.
Yes.
And all those sorts of things. It will tell you what tape the sewer television was on. We've talked with the school district to say.
But you
can-
don't need the sewer television tape
No, but it
anymore
will,
with GIS.
but it'll tell us where to find that file, I guess, however you wanna.
But moving forward, you don't even need that tape, it's just a video that gets uploaded.
Exactly, where that file is. But we also talked about, can we use this to help us plan facilities and programming? Can we look at, with the school district, which neighborhoods have the highest density of kids, so we put our rec programming at that park versus the park that doesn't have any kids living around it? Can we work with code enforcement to target areas that have the most code violations and keep track of that neighborhood? So I think we're talking the same language. It's just, it's going to take more than 1 year to get to that point.
And I think those are all good things, and we could also really work towards some real efficiencies in public works and across departments too, and with Monash Utilities. I'll have to go back. I have some other questions about software and hardware. Thank you.
Are there any other
Oh,
questions?
Steve.
Yep, yeah, John, Alderman Nichols actually brought up a couple of good points, which made me thinking, does Menasha Utilities have a GIS of their own right now?
We currently have GIS as well. It's just that it doesn't all speak together and it's not being used efficiently at this point.
Well, the efficiency point was, or part was what I was gonna get to is there a possibility of combining with Menasha Utilities on one GIS system and sharing the cost overall, reducing the cost of using the same GIS system between utilities and the city? Is that-
I can't answer that question. So typically you gather data from all over the place and everyone has their data layers that you kind of mesh them together.
Right.
And you kind of stack them all up on each other if you want to think about it that way and then look through. So we probably still all need that system. It's just where is that hub where we combine all those different databases together? So that's a Sam question. And I'm guessing that's not a Kurt question? Okay.
Okay. But it's just something to keep in mind. I don't
Yeah.
know if anybody actually looked at that, if that would be any type of savings or anything like that. Thank you.
Alderman Nichols?
I think it's a good idea to think of it from the point of savings, but also just being able to work together better the city of Menasha and Menasha Utilities. And I'm confused about the idea of a hub and would like to talk more about that.
I guess it's not a hub, it's who manages that data and those script routines to pull that all together.
And what's the frequency of that data getting updated? Is it done once a week? Is it done once a year? You know, you can't just dump the data in once and then just let it sit there for a couple of years. Somebody's gotta be constantly updating new data on some schedule.
I think that's where we need to learn more about the capabilities that are out there now.
Maybe not this year, though.
I'll tell you what, personally, GIS to me has been nothing but a disappointment. It has been a huge cost to this city. Every year, it seems like it's a large expense. And what you referenced 2011, well, I was here long before that, and we were spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on this, and I don't think we ever got our money's worth. You know, there are other things that are needed more in this community than how convenient and nice it would be if we could do this and that. But, I mean, I'm not saying it wouldn't be nice, but I think I'm not gonna make this my total focus. If I'm gonna have a workshop on something, trust me, it's not gonna be GIS. We got a whole lot of other stuff that's more important. So, but if we could move on, because we're already approaching 3 hours here, so.
I am done unless you had any other questions.
Anything else? So if you.
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry,
I did have one more question about
Sure.
finance and HR. Last year, the practice was to begin budgeting for that extra pay period that comes up every 7 years, is it? 11 years, and so I'm wondering if we're continuing that practice with this budget.
Because 2020 has 366 days in it, because it's a leap year, we are budgeting for not only 52 weeks times 7 is 364 days. So across all departments and all funds, we are budgeting for 2 extra days in that amount that needs to be placed in there. So then now going for 2021, 2023, we'll add 1 extra day. So 2020, with the budget we presented, we should have mentioned this somewhere along the line, way back in the beginning, we have 2 extra days in here, and we still ended up the budget you have that we proposed to you with the levy amount reducing by $1. So we have 2 extra days built in that will, and we will have then enough monies built up in the fund balance to be able to cover, and because December 31st, 2020 is the date of the 27th pay period. So we are not budgeting for a 27th pay period in this 2020 budget. We will be paying that, but we will have built up that amount of balance. So then going forward in future years, we'll have 1 extra day in 2021. And then when we get to 2024, we'll have to add 2 extra days because of leap year. But then we're going to continue to keep building that so that as long as you stay on that trajectory, in 11 years, which would be 2031, I can't guarantee how many of us will still be here, but that would be the next date for the next year for the 27th pay period again.
So the answer is yes, we're continuing
We're
that
continuing with the
practice.
process, yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
So we just have 3 budgets remaining. We have the Common Council, which is on page 16, 15 and 16. There really are no changes in the Common Council budget. We have budgeted for the recording and closed captioning the same as we did last year for the same number of meetings, the regular Common Council meetings, as well as the budget sessions. I believe we did up, John, didn't we have a pay increase for the Common Council though the next year? No.
Just you.
Just the mayor? Okay, I couldn't remember. So there really are no changes in the common council budget. If no one has any questions or wants to change anything. The mayor's budget is on page 19 and 18 and 19, 17, 18, 19. There's a couple changes in the mayor's budget. The Farm Fresh Market line has reduced slightly. We are planning on budgeting for our rec supervisor to be a full-time position next year. We did budget, I think it's 2% of her salary within the farm market. We do still need to have a discussion about the farm market for next year. We typically had ran it through a number of different areas. But there was $3,000 in my budget last year for that. But we did ask Megan to help us with that this year. We do need to have a discussion if we should have a farm market or not. So we'll be having that discussion in January, most likely. We're doing some gathering of information from both vendors and customers yet this fall. Otherwise, there really is not any changes within the mayor's budget either. There are two things in there I did forget about. We do have electronics recycling events, and there is a $150 fee to bring that company in. So those are, now that I'm managing the sustainability board, I had forgotten to put that in my budget. It had been in the community development budget in the past, as well as that website that goes with the sustainability board that runs throughout all the sustainability boards throughout the Fox cities. Everyone chips $50 in for the, I believe it's the Ecos website. So that is, those are costs that were already being paid. They were just shifted into the city, into the mayor's budget this year. Randy?
Yes, Don, thank you. That rec supervisor, I remember when Brian was working on hiring that person, it was last March, April, and May, and whatever, and then we never really, I guess I never really know who he hired, but I always thought that person, he used to have Donnie Allen, and Donnie worked in the summer, and that was just his job to do the,
Yes.
kind of help out, Brian during the summer. So now this person, that's who I thought he was hiring, somebody to replace like Donnie's job that was just busy June, July, and August while the parks were kind of working. Right. And,
This is a year-round position. It
So-
was in 2019, it was budgeted at 20 hours a week year-round.
Right.
And that was in addition to that summer person. We did reduce the hours of that summer
okay,
person slightly, but what this person was supposed to be working on was better integrating recreation programming, senior center programming, and library programming. So marketing those programs and integrating them more so that we had more of a full-fledged program.
okay,
And that person was also helping with the farm market this summer.
okay,
Next year, we did, in the budget, when Brian gets here, he will also share with you that we did budget that person full-time next year because we did see some very good benefits. We also were lucky enough to hire someone that was a recreation supervisor in Sussex in the past. So
okay.
this person brings a wealth of knowledge to the department, has a wealth of contacts, and has been able to just jump right in and do that.
Oh,
This person desires to be a full-time employee at some point. I do have some reservations that we'll be able to keep her if she does not become a full-time employee when a position opens elsewhere. So we
Okay.
think it is worthwhile to put it in the budget as a full-time employee to help us upgrade some of that programming as well.
okay, so in other words, if we continue the what word I'm looking for, the fruition where we went from, Adam to possibly, Corey, we could be going from Brian to this girl.
Megan.
Megan. Ah, okay. So
Could
this is-
potentially be that.
Okay, so we have to entice Brian to hang it up, so we keep her.
That is not something that you can talk about.
Okay,
We will talk about this on the 13th.
So.
Got it.
There really are
thank you, yep,
very few changes to the mayor's budget.
okay, thank you,
The-
John.
The last budget is the civic commemorations budget.
Wait.
Back to
Oh,
the.
sorry.
Oh, back to the mayor's budget, and I think Alderman Sevenick brought it up too, and is there an increase for the position of the mayor's salary going forward in this budget? I mean, that's something we decided to do, to get that
There
up
is.
to,
Yes, it's starting on the third Tuesday in April. So so you see, you don't see a nice round dollar amount here. It is prorated because it won't kick in until the fourth month. Yes.
So on, yeah, page 171 is civic commemorations. Basically, this budget is more or less the same as it has been in the past. We did include an extra $1,000 within the management category. The management category typically pays for fireworks and the parades. We did want to add a little bit of funding for the premiere of the Around the Corner video that will be coming out on PBS. We do have that scheduled. I believe we just got the date of, is it February 12th? Do you remember?
In the calendar.
Okay, there you go. So we do want to fund some of the activities that would be going on in the lobby at UW-Fox. They have volunteered graciously to fund the rental and use of the facility for free, and we would just have to fund anything that we wanted to do within that facility. I did also, typically that $1,000 that you see under promotional had been used for banners and things like that in the downtown. We did add that into the TIF 10 budget this year rather than the civic commemorations budget. And you'll notice that some of those banners are in need of replacement as well. But not really any major changes in this budget either. Does anyone have any questions on any of those budgets? I have HR.
Where's HR?
Yep.
I
Alderman
just-
Nichols?
I have a request as we're winding down. I always
Sure.
appreciate your summary that you put together
Okay.
to introduce the budget, but it is hard to read from this distance, so could you forward a copy
Sure.
of that to each of us?
I can forward that out, sure.
Thank you.
Do you want, I can attach it to the agenda as well, so that it'll be online. But I'll send it out to the alderman, and then I'll also put it on the agenda online.
Sure, thank you.
Candy, did you want to present something too? Pam's nudging me over here, were you? Okay, I had just,
Where's HR?
it was part of administrative services,
Part of administrative services.
so I didn't know if that's why she was nudging me, because you had something to present as well, or not. There's a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you.